Hey, it's Naked at Night with Lance and Channing and Rick. Wait, no, that's me and JD and Mark and Scott, probably.
Yeah,
With
Canadian.
Canadian. Um, so thieves took 7 minutes to bust into the Louvre and steal 8 precious Napoleonic French crown jewels. They had 9, but they dropped one on the way out. They used a ladder truck, one of these trucks with a scissor lift, and scooters. And they drove up with a scissor lift, and then they used angle grinders to cut through the window. And then they grabbed the stuff and left the scissor truck and escaped on powerful scooters. And so that, museums seem to be easy to steal from. And one reason is museum attendance is down 30% since before COVID, which means museums don't have enough money to exercise adequate security. Also, museums seem to often be complacent. They think they've taken enough precautions. And people are always coming up with new ways to steal crap from museums. And okay, another question. Well, the first question is, what do you do with the French crown jewels? You can't sell them on any kind of open market. So that led to speculation that maybe they were being stolen on commission for some like billionaire maniac who just wants to have. Lance, you do art.
Yeah. My nemesis is art thieves. Like if there was to be a sitcom about my life, it would be me trying to avoid art thieves. Actually, there is a true story. When I first moved into this industrial park, the good people of the ghetto found out that I was drawing nude women in here, and so the car mechanics and everybody wanted to come in. They were always thinking of reasons to come in, and they would look at a painting that I took a year to do, and they'd say, "Hey, that's nice. I'd like to put that in my house. How much do you want for it?" And I'd say, $200. And they'd say, "Oh man, I got to get some new rims for my truck. I'm sorry." I said, "All right, well, if you ever come back, maybe $195." Nah, it's too expensive. So anyway, yes, it's true that museums are not well guarded.
Lance, look at the camera.
Oh, yeah. No, Rick actually brought this subject up because Rick thinks that everybody in our show would steal something if they could. So
that's not true, but it does lead to my question, which is, what would you steal? Now, I have a couple ideas. I don't think you can. Stealing cash seems like a tough proposition right now because fewer people use cash. And then if you steal a bunch of cash, you can't use it for large transactions. Like you can't just buy a house for $1.5 million and pay cash. That will trigger all sorts of questions about where you got the money. And that leaves you having to trickle it out year over year. And where do you keep it? And you lose money to inflation. And it's just, I don't know, cash doesn't, if you're going to do like a heist that involves a lot of cash, like a screenplay, you probably have to set it in the 1980s when people still used cash. If I were to steal stuff now, I guess if I have the technical skill, it would be Bitcoin. Bitcoin seems easier to hide transactions. Or, and this would be 10 years in the future, I would steal medicine. I believe that billionaires are working on a whole bunch of powerful medicines that will help them live, till 100, maybe 110. And for instance, in the future, they tried this with, they grew a kidney, I think, or maybe a heart in a pig, and they transplanted it into a guy who was brain dead just to see if it would work. They can genetically tweak pigs so to make organs, human organs, that your body won't reject. And if I were going to write a heist movie, I'd set it in 2033, and I'd have it be, the heist would be that these scammers had tricked a medical company into growing a kidney that will fit them in a pig, but now they have to steal the kidney pig, and that's the caper. Lance, you don't want to steal anything?
I would. The only thing I could conceivably steal, would want to steal, would be Gal Gadot's heart. And the reason, I was just looking the other day, you know, Gal Gadot was Miss Israel.
No, I knew she was in the Israeli army.
Yeah, no, she was actually Miss Israel. And I think she was the perfect Wonder Woman. And, you know, people just don't give her enough credit. I think she's just wonderful.
All right. Channing?
Yeah. Oh, I had more to say about Gal Gadot, but that's all right. Please, Channing, chime in.
Oh, well, if I could steal something. I mean, besides the hearts and, you know, emotions of most men or boys. I'm just kidding. What do I like to steal? Or if I could steal anything, I tend to be a pretty honest, you know, trustworthy person. I always thought when I become an old granny, I feel like that's when I could get away with robbing a bank. You know, like I've heard people dress up like old people and rob banks, and then it worked for a while, and then when they got caught, that really sucked. But I always said, like, if I was gonna rob a bank, I'd wait till I was an old granny, and hopefully I get away with it. But if I got caught, I'd be like, oh, you know, play senile.
Well, that's what Netanyahu
Like, did I do that?
Yeah, that's a good strategy. That's kind of what Netanyahu is doing, trying to stay in office long enough, because he's 75 to be too old to send to prison if he gets found guilty of the charges. I did a caper when I was much younger. So there was a movie called Real Genius, where the smartest guy in the world entered a McDonald's sweepstakes like 400,000 times, because there was no rule against it, and he won 40% of the prizes. I'm like, well, wait, I've got the highest IQ in America. I should do that caper. I found a contest where Godiva Chocolates was giving away $1 million diamond for a random person who entered at a certain chain of jewelry stores. And I'm like, I should enter that thing 1,000 times. And so I drove around LA. I grabbed stacks of entry forms. I filled them out. And then I would go to jewelry stores and sneak them into the boxes. And this was stupid for a number of reasons. But the main reason was the jewelry stores have like 8 hidden cameras pointed at everything in the store. I wasn't fooling. I got yelled at a couple times. But even when I didn't get yelled at, the jewelry store could see that some asshole had just jammed 50 or 100 entries into their entry box. And of course, they opened it up and threw them all away. So I was a freaking idiot. JD, you got any thoughts on what you'd steal?
You know what I would steal is I would steal television time, like because I have this show called Rock Climb on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's about a struggling musician, right? And I think it's really funny. And
it is
campy. And what I would do is I would go to break into like a studio where like maybe ABC where they show shows. And what I would schedule I would put in my 10 episodes instead of whatever show they were going to show on during their 7 p.m.
Prime time.
So I would steal studio time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that. And I get
Hey,
mad.
it's not my turn yet, but since y'all are all stealing and everything like that, can I steal Pam Grier or Holly Berry or Layla Rashawn's heart, kind of to Shannon's point and all along those lines? And if I can't steal their heart, can I steal Quincy Jones or Disney's studio? And then I bring all of us into a real professional studio so we can do this show in a professional studio and everything.
That's a nice idea.
I like it. What were you saying?
I was saying I get mad at how good TV is now, and I wish I could take the shows back in time to the 1970s when not you, you're too young, you missed the 70s, but the TV in the 70s sucked. But there was, like the best thing on was maybe Fantasy Island, and it was not great. It was super bad. And if I could take a show like Breaking Bad or Mad Men or what's on now that's really good. I like The English Teacher is good. Game of Thrones, any of these great shows of the recent of now, and take them back to when we were watching shit and just switch out the shows. All right, what else are we going to talk about? Lance, do a topic.
Well, I've been trying to grapple with the Ukraine, and basically it turns out that the Russians can't seem to take over Ukraine, which was their goal. And it's just a matter of whether Ukraine will give up territory. And so
you can look at the camera.
So what's been going on is Trump, because he's so open, just said, yeah, I asked Putin if he wanted us to give Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. And he didn't like the idea. So it's basically, Trump is really ingenious. So for 2 or 3 years, as you guys know, Putin did not invade any of his neighbors under Trump's administration, but he did under Obama, a little bit under Bush, and under Biden. And Biden couldn't figure out what to do about it and watched it happen for a couple of years. And Trump is trying to solve the crisis, is trying to end the war. And he's really ingenious because he's doing 2 things. He just got India to agree not to, I'm being fact checked. He's getting India to agree and the European Union to agree not to buy any more oil from Russia. And this apparently eluded Biden. Biden never thought of that. So what's happening is, now you may think that economic pressure won't matter much to a guy that just lost 1 million men. But it turns out without the money that he gets from selling oil, Putin is in a bad way. You do need money to pay for equipment, to pay for your army. So unlike Biden, Trump got the bright idea, why don't we isolate Russia completely economically? So that will hurt them a lot. And then why don't I float the idea in front of the entire world that I'm going to give Ukraine missiles capable of damaging their country dramatically. Now, these aren't nuclear missiles, but what they're capable of doing is knocking out Russia's arms production, particularly their drone factory, is all in one place, and it could be wiped out in a second by a Tomahawk missile. So Trump is doing this all out in the open because, as you know, he's not presidential. He doesn't keep everything secret. He just tells people, this is what we're going to do. We're going to isolate them economically. We're going to arm Ukraine with much, much better weapons. And then he went ahead and said this, just offhandedly, just because he's open. He says, we might even be able to get all that territory back that the Russians took. We may even get it to the point where Russia loses the war by losing all the territory and 1 million men. So this is what Trump is doing. He's negotiating. He's negotiating in public, and he's showing Putin, look, these are just some of the things I can do, and I can do them immediately, and I'm getting people to agree. So I think ultimately there will be territorial losses by Ukraine, but Zelensky is difficult for Trump to deal with because he doesn't want to lose any territory. So not only does Trump have to confront Putin, but he has to, in his mind, get Zelensky to be realistic and say, look, you're not going to be able to throw back 500,000 men that have invaded your country, but maybe we can get it to the bare minimum. So that's what I think is happening. All right, go ahead.
I have a couple more than quibbles, really. Biden didn't do nothing. Biden gave, and I looked it up, you're right, I did. Biden gave about $183 billion to Ukraine, including almost $131 billion for weapons and security, most of which stayed in the U.S. The U.S. bought a shit ton of weapons, most stuff that it was kind of obsolete for us from contractors, old stock, which was shipped to Ukraine for defense. So it helped our economy, and it helped Ukraine. And then another $44 billion in economic support to keep the government running and provide funding for teachers and healthcare workers. So Biden didn't do nothing. Now, the 8 wars that Trump claims he stopped, oh yeah, you're pointed at Lance, not me.
No, but I wanted to have my face in the camera laughing derisively.
Oh, I see. Now point it back.
I'm featuring the painting.
All right, well, come on, I'm talking here, buddy. And if you look at I tell people to Google this stuff. If you don't like Google, there are a bunch of other, what do you use? What do you tell people? DuckDuckGo for people who don't like communist Google or some shit?
Just the News or the Gateway Pundit.
All right, well, all right. So, I mean, if you want to look at multiple sources, including conservative sources, go ahead and Google the wars that Trump claims he stopped. For instance, India-Pakistan. Now, these guys have been at war for 73 years since, 78 years since they became separate countries in 1947. And they have skirmishes every few years. And, nobody's going to be able to stop that over a high altitude border area called Kashmir, right?
Yeah.
And that it's a lot like Israel Gaza, where it's been going on for a long ass time, and you're probably not going to be able to stop it permanently. And then take a look at the other 7 wars that he says he stopped. And anyway, take a look. Channing, do you have a topic?
A topic. Let's talk about
I put you on the spot.
Yeah. Let's talk about what we want to see in our future, with the circumstances at,
Okay,
right
that's
now.
a good topic. I like that.
Yeah.
What do we want out of the future?
What do we want to manifest or see? Like, what to come of everything. I mean, there's a lot of things going on.
All right,
I'll
well,
go unless
all right,
Lance,
you
you want to go. All right, so I want to see Dems win the House in 2026 and kind of put, you know, the against all odds over the past couple quarters, the U.S. economy has been, and Lance is going to say, "I told you so." The U.S. economy has been outperforming predictions with an estimated 3.8% growth in Q2 and maybe the same 3.8 for Q3. And what I think is going on is right now the government's shut down. It's been shut down for almost 3 weeks now. And business and industry like a paralyzed government because then nobody's supervising them and they can do whatever the hell they want. So I assume some of the business exuberance in the country is due to the government being all screwed up. Some other stuff is the AI bubble, which is getting really puffy and bubbly. And, the bubble's going to pop. People are going to lose money. But in 2026, if the Dems can take control of one of the houses of Congress, they can put the brakes on Congress just okaying everything Trump wants to do, which is another kind of stalemate, which could be not terrible for the economy and also would put the kibosh on a lot of the daily nuttiness coming out of the White House. That's thing one. Thing two is, AI could go batshit crazy. It's going to get more and more powerful. And the people in charge of AI, not every one of those people is a saint. And some of these are greedy motherfuckers who are engaging in AI roulette, engaging in unsafe development of a fast growing, chaotic technology that could really screw us up. And thing three is, I want to keep on being alive. I want AI and medical science to keep coming up with stuff that lets old people live longer. All right.
What I want is for the Republicans to stamp out the Democrats completely. They caused the Civil War. A lot of people think the war between the states was a war between North and South, but it could also be described as a war between Republicans in the North who wanted to free the slaves and Democrats in the South. The Democrats have always been thugs that have done everything they can just for power. They really don't care whether they help people or not. For 100 years, they've been saying that they were trying to help the poor and the working class. And then in the past 10 years, they figured out they could get more votes if they brought in more illegal aliens and got them citizenship. So that's what they did, to the vast detriment of the working class. For decades, they were trying to say that they cared about Blacks and Hispanics and people living in the poor areas, and they let the inner cities flounder with the worst crime in our history, doing nothing about it and actively resisting any effort to control crime. So finally, I believe they stole the election in 2020, and I think they've been stealing elections for the past 100 years. And I think that what we need to do is destroy their party, make them the minority party of kooks. Basically, it's people that want to be dictators who are supported by people that are brainwashed by the Democrat media. And I want them to become a peculiar little party that people remember the way they think of the Whigs and the Federalists. And I also want their leaders to be prosecuted for making up the Russia hoax, saying that Trump was a Russian spy. And that was a coup. That was a soft coup. I mean, people weren't killed, but they put dozens of prominent Republicans in jail, not just for the January 6th riot, but because they were trying to find any legal reason they could to put Trump's advisors and lawyers in prison on technicalities. So I want Obama to be exposed. We found out that he was behind part of it, all of it actually. And I'll wrap this up. I want the Democrat leaders that are responsible for the corruption, the power grabs, to suffer and go to prison.
All right, Channing, I want to ask you what you want out of the future. But first, who sounds less insane between Lance and Rick here?
Gosh, do I hate being put on the spot.
You don't have to answer.
I will, I find it very interesting, both of your sides on the matter. When I see a question like that or hear a question like that, I might be just a bleeding, beautiful woman who cares about the bigger perspective of humanity. Things are getting pretty crazy. And as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to see a land and a space and a place where we can acknowledge each other's differences. We can be on the same team instead of being so divided. We know for sure that in order for us to live on this planet and for our children's to be here, we should be more conscious about our carbon mark on this planet and what we do to affect or change. I think that it's important to look at the bigger perspective. We all need to live here. We all bleed the same color blood. And instead of being so divided, whether it's politics, religion, or the size of my pinky nail, it's like we have to find a common ground to find common solution for all of these topics and anything that is going on that affects us as humans or the planet that we live on.
How do we get there? Because the increase in political division goes along in part with the birth of news channels that cater to a particular political stance. Fox News is about 30 years old. CNN a little older, but MSNBC, they're all about, they're all 25. So, and they all cater to, they either lean liberal or conservative. They all make, billions a year, I assume, in ad revenue. And they don't do a lot to make people less angry and less divided. And how do you fix that?
Well, what we know about news and like TV in general is it's all about ratings. It's all about stirring the pot sometimes. It's not always, the best, hard to say, but what I will say is that all this division, all this dividing, that's like a conquer, divide, control. And as far as me being an American and my background, I want freedom. I want my human rights to be respected. And I want to follow a path of what we're promised as American citizens or our human rights. So what's going on dividing everyone, it's not solving anything. It's keeping people in that state of chaos and friction. And so then there is no solution being made. It's just division over and over and over.
All right, JD.
Benjamin Franklin said, "We must all hang together, or surely we will all hang separately." And so I think that this great experiment of our Constitution of the government of America, a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. I don't know if I said that right, but if we could truly live by that credence, if you will, if we could have politicians like we should all serve in Congress because we all have great ideas. We're all smart, and that was the original intention of the founding fathers. Where people take turns. I mean, we have politicians who they've done that their whole lives, and they have no idea what the fuck I'm going through, or what Shannon's going through, or what Rick's going through, or what Lance. We're all like, how are they supposed to serve the people if they don't even know if they live in a bubble? And so I think if we had politicians who were not career politicians in the future, if people would go to Congress and they serve and they get the hell out and they allow us, of the people, for the people, by the people, to serve, and that way politicians could truly represent their districts and their states, and the senators would represent their states. I think that would go a long way in terms of unifying this country. That's my 2 cents.
Got one more thing, and then we can go to Mark.
Mark is in. Scott, we've got Canadian questions.
Okay, so all right, let me do a quick thing, and then we'll go to Scott. I think 2016 was the first AI presidential election because there was a company out of England called Cambridge Analytica, and it would take a look at your social media posts, and it would throw you into like one of, I don't know, 4 to 6 buckets. It's, and based on which bucket it threw you in, you would get bombarded with a tailored set of Facebook messaging. If you leaned conservative, you'd be in one bucket. If you leaned liberal, you'd be in another bucket. And it was designed to influence behavior in the election. It was pretty primitive, but that was 9 years ago. And I feel like AI is going to get more and more powerful, and maybe make it less and less possible for us to make our own decisions because we're being barraged with tailored propaganda. And that to me seems like not the best future unless we kind of give up and just hope that AI decides that it wants everybody to be kumbaya and get along with each other. And I don't know that AI is going to do that. Scott.
Scott?
Unmute yourself, Scott.
Hi, how are you? So we're asking about hopes, basically. What we want for the future. On the individual, I don't believe in hope for any of us. But in terms of collectively, I see a lot of problems that need solving. Whether it's ongoing ones that have been going for decades, whether it's nuclear weapons proliferation, climate change, mass migration that's going to be sort of associated with the latter that I just mentioned, preparation for future pandemics, increase of peacetime as opposed to wartime, and making sure that peacetime is not just meaning temporary ceasefires or pauses, things like this. Yeah, I mean, these are huge problems that can only be dealt with in terms of collective action or in terms of a strategic mass deterrence, as that has been done with multiple states with regards to nuclear weapons. I don't know if that can necessarily be done in all cases. So, for instance, if you have a theocratic regime of any type that thinks it's better to have an afterlife, well, then it's not necessarily wise to have them have nuclear weapons, right? at least in leadership. I might believe those things. What else? Yeah, I see things as problems that need solved. I don't think hopey dust is necessarily going to get you very far individually or collectively.
Is there one thing that one aspect of now that has the best chance of reducing the risks to us? Nuclear, climate, political, AI. Is there something that can like calm the waters?
Typically, societies and civilizations that trade have an increase of peace, have reasons to be on good terms with one another. And even if it's a Cold War scenario, if you get treaties among those who are at least trading a little bit, that actually does, if you look at the record of the treaties that were the non-proliferation treaties, the several that were put forward over the last several decades, they have corresponded with a decrease in nuclear weapons, for instance, in terms of armaments, ready to go, just ready to fire. And the two biggest holders of those are Russia, formerly the Soviet Union, and the United States, well over 90% of all of them. France, Pakistan, but
1,700 nuclear warheads apiece. But what you seem to be suggesting is, all right. One thing. It seems like you say a path to world peace is every country making its own cool shit that the rest of the world wants, and us increasing, passing that shit back and forth. Russia has great artisans. China has great tech, and we have even better tech. So if the U.S. becomes the capital of robotics, and we start trading with the rest of the world, you're saying that's a possible path to reduce.
I would expand it from the metric of cool and put it in terms of effective, right? So in terms of aesthetics, depending on an area, people find the iPhone pretty cool. But it's not just stuff, it's also services. And so the really advanced economies like Singapore, United States, South Korea, they transition from infrastructure and stuff, although they still have it, into service economies. So it's cool things you do, but effective items too. So you're not going to ask a Haitian to start building high technology necessarily. I mean, a more practical thing for a young person is to master tour guiding or working on cruise lines, at least for that time being, because it's more practical, right? You have to take it at a case-by-case basis. Because sometimes the poverty or the lack of education is too immense for most people most of the time. I'm not talking about, the exceptional cases.
All right, Mark, I guess Mark's up, right?
Yeah, but I got a quick question.
Thanks, Scott.
It's a very quick question, and it's actually one that everybody can answer, but it's really geared based on something that I observed from Shannon, and I observed earlier from a young lady that was on social media, and then I observed it while I was out and about and everything like that. So I was just wondering, are leopard outfits or those kind of like leopard prints as well as floral prints back in style? Because I noticed that you had the leopard over top and everything like that on the chair, Shannon. And I saw another young lady that had a leopard print earlier and everything like that. And then I saw a young lady that had a floral print earlier today. So are those back in style?
I think it's a cat's meow type of world. Yeah, I mean, came in with cat ears, and I was going for this whole kitty cat theme, myself. I'm very cat-like, but also it's Halloween. So why not dress up and have fun? I think it probably is coming back. It's sexy. I don't think it'll ever go out of style.
I too am a cat. Unfortunately, and to me, it's not something I'm overly happy about. But I used to be 30 pounds heavier, which made me a big dog. But now I'm skinnier, not entirely on purpose. So I have stupid stuff that I call myself right before I do a set at the gym to psych myself up to do the set. And I might call myself a butt weasel, or I might just say, "Meow, I'm a cat," if I'm curling less than I used to curl.
And I laid with this.
But nobody hears me because everybody has their earbuds in, so I can say whatever ridiculous shit I want at the gym.
Yeah, that makes sense. Before we get to the music and everything, and it's why I laid with this one. The Naked Night, only a week and a half from the ghouls and everything like that, meaning the Halloween trick or treating that Channing was alluding to and everything like that. It's been a minute since I've been to a costume party. As a matter of fact, I don't know that I've ever been to a costume party, even though my dad used to go to one regularly at a 21C hotel, which is a national hotel chain that's regionally based. I think they're originally from Kentucky or Tennessee, if I remember correctly, but they are definitely regionally based, and he and his lady love used to go regularly. But if you were to go out in a week and a half on the 31st in a costume, because I saw a lot of costumes at the No King Parade, including some people dressed as cows. I'm not sure what the cows have to do with Trump.
All right, I have a costume that I used to wear every year, and it was a caveman on roller skates with a loincloth. And the deal was I tried to be as naked as possible, hoping that would get me laid. But the deal is a woman can do that, and guys will hit on her, but a guy still needs to be able to talk to girls. And I was still, even naked, I was bad and scared about talking to girls. I'm petrified right now. I'm 2 feet away from a girl, and it's super frightening. And so I never hooked up on Halloween.
What about you, Scott? Do you go anywhere on Halloween, and are you going in costume? You're on mute, Scott.
Scott?
I work on what people call holidays or birthdays or get-togethers, pretty much always. So I will not be doing anything.
Yeah, I probably won't be doing anything either. Shannon, what about yourself? Are you going anywhere in a costume?
Halloween, the Wild Childs have a show in Frogtown. So we are going to be playing a show, and we might do a group costume, or we might just do our individual thing. So if you go, that's how you'll know.
So where's Frogtown?
Frogtown is it's a new up and coming art district in Glendale.
Will the show be live streamed since I'm all the way in North Carolina?
Maybe. Stay tuned. I'll figure out how to get that out to viewers, maybe. Or get some videos on the Instagram.
Let me know. I'll definitely be looking forward to seeing it. Lance, before we hear the music, and I want to hear from JD as well, where are you going out in the costume?
I recently saw I have glaucoma, and so I had an operation a few days ago. Everything went well, but they gave me an eye patch, and I thought, great. I finally had the ability to wear an eye patch.
Be a pirate.
And I was giddy with excitement. And I put the eye patch. I got the eye patch on. I thought this is something I've always wanted. I feel comfortable. I feel good. And I went outside and I tried to drive my car, and I realized it's really fucked to have just one eye. So I ripped off my eye patch, and half the eye went with it, but it was worth it. So eye patches are not really all they're expected to be.
Understood.
And now music.
Yes.
I want to be a giraffe.
You want to be a giraffe? That's going to be hard to pull off.
JD, you got the heart, man. You're good.
Gato Negro. This song. Gato Negro. Gato Negro, yeah. Lloviendo mi canción, lágrimas al corazón. Lloviendo mi canción, lágrimas al corazón. Take it away, Shannon.
Gato negro, gato negro. Don't keep playing those games with me no more.
Black cat, yeah. You rain my salty pleasure run now. You're raining my salty pleasure run now. There's honey and they're following me, me dancing in the gato.
Oh. Meow. Black cat, where you going? Black cat, better not go down that type of alley no more.
Yeah. So don't pause for this next. Stick around for the next episode. It's going to be very, very nice. Meow. Thank you, Shannon, for joining me. We're just having fun. Isn't she great? Incredible. We're riffing. We're adding lib, and that was the song that I wrote, Gato Negro. But man, she just improved it 100%. Stick around for one more episode coming up. Bam! Bam!
Hey, Naked at Fricking Night. Lance, JD, Channing, me, and Mark. Maybe Scott's still sticking around up in Canada. I'm almost out of topics, except I got one remaining topic, which is, there's supposedly an epidemic of autism where one kid in 30 is maybe on the spectrum. But if you actually look at it, it's an epidemic of awareness where if you control for severity of symptoms decade by decade, there have always been roughly the same percentage of people with the same percentage of autism. It's just we're aware of more ways that people can be on the spectrum. For instance, 30 years ago, there were almost no girls on the spectrum because we didn't know what autism looked like in girls. It looks different often than in boys. But I would make the case that if there was ever a time to be on the spectrum, now is it, where some of the greatest on the spectrum people of the 70s and 60s grew up to be today's tech bro billionaires. Any kid graduating from high school should know how to code, which is a pretty frickin' mathy thing. And so what do you think? Is this the greatest time in history to be autistic, which might include things like OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, meticulous attention to obscure details, difficulty with social interactions in many people, which can be overcome, via, if you can't talk to people face to face, which Gen Z seems to be having a problem with. Maybe you can talk to people via social media, dating apps, hookup apps. What do you think?
Rick, this was not just a topic that you chose. I believe it's a cry for help. And no, but part of the reason this came up is that another wonderful thing that Trump is doing is he's got RFK Jr. Trying to solve the country's health problems. And he maintains that people are more autistic than ever. And then the Democrats rose to say, oh, no, they're not. They're just playing with the statistics. I personally haven't done any reading on the subject, so I'm ambivalent, but I will say I'm really happy that we had a leader get together all the food companies and say, we want you to take all the artificial dyes out of our food. And we also want there to be testing of all the vaccines with double-blind tests against other. What is the gold standard? Double blind.
Double blind means, well, let's explain
No,
double blind.
but there's a look. Let's not explain it. Let's just say we want the vaccines tested in a scientific way, and they haven't been. And so I don't know why the Democrats are all of a sudden on the side of the pharmaceutical companies, which they've decried my whole life. But thank God we have someone that doesn't just take their word for it and is trying to help the obesity problem. Now, Rick, you can't just lie that. I mean, you can't just ignore that. We are definitely more obese than
We are.
been.
No, with 78% of American adults are overweight or obese.
Yeah. So what is, I'm so proud of our president for trying to do something about that. I mean, Biden didn't do anything or care, was of no interest in whatsoever. So, and you know what? Kennedy said, why are we putting fluoride in the water? It gives brain damage. It lowers the IQs of children. And we've been having fluoride in our toothpaste for about 60 years. So it doesn't make any sense. And the Democrats thought, well, that's fine. And we finally have a guy that says, wait a minute, why are we what is the actual scientific reason for putting fluoride in the water supply? So, I don't know why, as a Democrat, you reflexively have to say this is bad. And then typically what Rick does, so I'll just stop him in advance, is he tries to find something disgusting in the past of Robert F. Kennedy's personal life and then smear him, because Democrats they don't have good arguments, so they just try to smear the person. Like Trump, he's egotistical. Anyway, so that's all I have to say about that.
All right. So here's something disgusting from the past of RFK Jr. He's got no training in science or math or statistics or epidemiology. And the reason we have fluoride in the water is because it strengthens enamel and reduces the rates of tooth decay. And tooth decay is associated with all sorts of horrible shit. So I have the highest IQ in America. And I've been using high fluoride toothpaste since my 20s to try to keep my teeth in my head. When my wife met me, I was driving a Pinto and that stank of grape high fluoride toothpaste because I would brush my teeth while I drove. And she looked past that to eventually, get married to me. And so I've been using a shit ton of fluoride for my whole life, and I still have a huge ass IQ. And yes, fluoride can lower IQ, but only in doses way, way bigger than you'd get from drinking fluoridated water.
Rick's wife is a saintly woman. I just want to say that.
And with vaccines have all been tested extensively. The one place where you might find, and I'm not even sure of this, that testing has fallen down, is maybe they haven't tested adequately against all demographics. Like there used to be medical testing, was done mostly on adult men. And maybe that led to some shit being overlooked among women and children. But I think over the past 20 years, that too has been largely rectified. It's not like people would put out a vaccine without testing it. It happened once 50 years ago under President Ford. So the CDC said that we were about to get hit with a deadly epidemic of swine flu. This was in about 74 or 75. Said we all had to get vaxxed on the double. And they put out the swine flu vaccine, and it caused Guillain-Barré syndrome, if I'm pronouncing it right, which is varying degrees of paralysis that could last for months or longer in about, I think, 1 person in 1,000 who got the vaccine, which was a fucking disaster, especially since the swine flu epidemic didn't come to pass. And since then, the CDC has been especially gun shy about letting vaccines out there that haven't been thoroughly tested. There's a book by the guy who wrote the Blind Side, Michael Lewis, called The Premonition, which is about how the CDC came to be super chicken shit, super cautious about doing anything like that. So I believe that vaccines are generally super tested.
All right. Well, it turns out that it had to be released during the Trump administration that the vaccine companies have actually admitted that the COVID vaccine causes myocarditis at alarming rates for young men. So that was something that the Democrats needed to keep secret from us. So I'm not that impressed. Anyway.
Can I respond to myocarditis before you go on?
Sure.
So myocarditis is inflammation of the sac surrounding your heart. So I guess every time your heart beats, if your sac is pissed off, you're going to feel a certain degree of owiness. But it doesn't kill anybody. It just causes, it's a side effect of the vax, and it goes away.
It weakens the heart permanently.
I don't buy that.
Okay, well, you know what? I really genuinely worry that you're not going to live very long. And I know this is a little off topic, but you've had 10 vaccinations.
10 COVID vaccines.
Yeah, you've had 10 COVID vaccines. And what that is doing to your heart scares the daylights out of me. I don't have that many friends, and I'm afraid I'm going to lose you.
So I don't get the heart owies any more than I used to. So I used to get the heart owies ever since I've lived in LA driving Sunset Boulevard because it's super curvy. People drive it super fast, and frickin' it just makes my chest hurt. Even when I was in my 20s and 30s, Sunset gave me the chest owies. Now sometimes I get a little bit of chest owies after I jizz because my heart's going thump.
God's sake.
But I don't think I get it at a higher rate than I used to.
Maybe it's just as well if you don't make it. I have a new topic.
Okay.
All right. So my topic is this. I've been promoting a theory that comes more true every day, and that is that women don't really like men, at least not as much as we like women, and that the more independent women become, the more we find this out. Because in previous eras, they had to like us. But now that they don't have to, they don't. And you can see that in 1,000 different ways. And one of the ways I think you can see it is in the rise of homosexuality among women and transgenderism. However, this week, a new study came out, very comprehensive, showing that sophomores, freshmen to college, are 1/2 as likely to be LGBTQ as seniors. So literally in a 4-year span, homosexuality among the youth has diminished by 50%, right? That's how it works, right?
Yeah.
So anyway,
I mean, if you buy the stats.
So no, but I'm just saying mathematically. So what happened was the people that were doing the study were amazed by this. And so they asked them follow-up questions because they thought, well, maybe it's because of a rise of conservatism or a rise of religiosity. It turns out, no. the religiosity and the the political views of the young people are not different. What is different, so as a result, the people taking the survey determined that homosexuality is a fad, and that it turns out that it's just social contagion. So if everybody thinks it's cool to be gay, you'll get more people that are gay. If they don't, you'll get less people that are gay. And now that doesn't mean that my theory is wrong, because I still do think that women don't particularly like men. But it does not affect necessarily the rise of homosexuality that we've lived through.
So I have a related topic, which is men being lost. So the overall enrollment in colleges in the US is 57 to 58% female and 42 to 43% male. For every 4 females going to college, there are only 3 males. So if you're looking for a possible cause of women hooking up with women, well, there's a surplus of women. But it's concerning, I think, for both conservatives and libs, that that education, that what's happening with the bros, that where they're not getting as educated, and does that make them, I don't know, feel useless? Does that make them embrace like some crazy bullshit? I don't know. But then I have one more topic.
Can I respond, or do you want to go on? I mean,
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, they've done a lot of studying about that, and the reason that people believe that this is happening is because of the feminization of the educational system. So, in subtle ways, leftists have taken over and feminists have taken over the schools, the primary and secondary schools, and they've changed the way children are educated, and it's actually detrimental to the boys.
Oh, well, I got to say that like half of the students in America are studying STEM, which is science and math and engineering, and there's nothing particularly gendered about studying the coefficient of friction or the shear modulus of some, or frickin' differential equations.
Well, it manifests in things like the way they have recess. Like the girls are less rowdy and more sort of sedate, and so they get better grades now because the boys are more rambunctious. And in 50 years ago, there was the argument that people would just say boys will be boys, and they gave them different kinds of recess so they could roughhouse more. But now the boys are marked down for the behavior a lot.
Yeah, and a lot of boys get like diagnosed with hyperactivity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas that was pretty much the norm when I was growing up, that all boys were just hyperactive.
Yeah, it was jungle land, and I got beat up a lot at recess, and then like sometimes I would snap and really fuck somebody up.
It's great how you did that.
But I have one more topic in this general area, which is earlier I mentioned the Gluck Gluck 9000, which is Alex Cooper's like best BJ in the world.
You're not going to say anything disgusting.
No, what I'm going to say is that it seems to be linked to the pornographization of America, of the whole world, where it seems to be one of the draws, one of the things that she claims this is the best technique in the world. And it seems to be linked to the performative aspect of it, that you make it all spitty.
Wait a minute.
No, hold on.
I'm not going to get into the details.
No. Let me get to my point, that you pretend to be gagging on the dick because it's so big you have to use 2 hands on it. This seems to be like making sex extra dirty and extra porny. And that, and you just talked about like some of the guys you date have these porny expectations. Hold on. No. But my question is, and I don't know if any of us know the answer, but now, thanks to porn and TV, like everybody on TV, even not in porn, if somebody takes off their clothes, they're wearing black underwear, and it probably reads better on TV. Like just visually, it shows up better. But like black underwear used to be hoary, and now it's just everybody wears black underwear. But my question is, do we think there was, that if you ask a Christian, like I looked it up, Catholics and other Christians, like for married Catholics and Christians, when you have sex, there should be a chance you get pregnant. That's what sex is for. So I looked it up, and I'm like, well, what about after menopause? Can you still have sex? And the answer from Catholics and Christians is yes, that it's still a loving bond between a married couple. And I'm like, okay, but was there ever a time when sex wasn't all porny for our parents, our grandparents, and they had sex, and like they were like, that was so wholesome, and I now feel more bonded as a loving couple instead of the Gluck 9000. What do you guys think? It was sex ever not dirty, but like a loving freaking celebration of couplehood? Or can it be today?
Well, I mean, it's only really good when it's dirty.
Yeah, but was it always that way, or was there ever a time in a more wholesome America in the 50s?
I think that's just personal preference of what you're into, and as you change and grow, like you change, and maybe your sex ideas or thoughts or fantasies change. I think that all of that's, relative to the subject.
So do you think that people can have healthy, non-effed up sex now?
Well, that's a matter of opinion of what's healthy or what's not healthy. I mean, it's all the eye of the beholder. Just because someone has rough or fun or fiery, exciting sex doesn't make it less, what you're painting this picture of a perfect, loving, married couple or happy couple and what that looks like. That's up to them behind closed doors,
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't think we talked about this topic the first time I came on the show about women, hating men more in today's times. I don't think I hate men anymore. I think I've had enough experience to build a case, and that's relative to like each sex and gender. You could have pros and cons for women and men. I hear a lot of men bashing the woman. And I hear a lot of women bashing the man. And I think if anyone builds a case against something, you start finding more and more and more like attention to the topic, and it starts to fill up on your perspective and your views. Not to say that, and if you just think about things in numbers and what happens in society and in nature, it can make sense why women would build a large case against men, because unfortunately, there are a lot of terrible experiences that can go down from the male gender. And I hate saying that, but I think a lot of women decide not, and the women I know decide not to be or associated with men anymore. It's because maybe they've been hurt over and over and over. But also maybe they date the wrong kind of guys. Like it gets way more deeper. It's like an onion with many, many layers. To generally say that is probably a true statement. But it's person to person and their trauma that they have in relationships or with maybe male dominant men in a person's life. And I think now women are more entitled to speak their mind and talk about their experiences, where maybe in the past it was something you didn't talk about, you didn't stir the pot, you didn't talk about any negative experiences, when it comes to your marriage and your status, or we just now can comfortably talk about things that are uncomfortable on TV and in social media. So maybe these things are coming up because people have more freedom of speech or are not shunned or scared to speak their minds on topics like that.
Do you think that certain parts of the country have people who are more terrible than other parts of the country? Like LA has a reputation for people being shallow and obsessed with looks, which it's almost everybody in LA knows how attractive they are generally, because that's where the entertainment industry is, and that's like a facet of getting work.
Yeah, I do. I definitely think that. I also feel that, I have an experience with that. When I changed schools from Atlanta public school systems to the country, it was a whole different demographic of people that I, transferred into. And I had just started the school. I was a week in. It was like the last 3 months of 8th grade. So you can imagine what an intense time that is.
The worst possible grade.
For, anybody going through their beginnings of adolescence. And I switched schools and it was way different. But there were these girls that I was hanging out with. And for whatever reason, they decided, they were trying to kind of haze me and see if I was a girlfriend or if I was an enemy. And at that time, kids are so cruel anyways, but the girls can be a little more intense sometimes. And so they had decided that they didn't like me. And I must have said or did something that rubbed them the wrong way, or maybe they were never in the business for liking me. But we hung out one day. And then the next day I could feel an energy weirdness because I walked through the hallways and everybody was staring at me and whispering rumors. And I'm like, what is going on? And it was so uncomfortable because at that age and any age, you just want to be accepted and loved. And it's already challenging to go through all of that, the transfer. So I'm like, what's going on? Turns out they made a rumor that I smelled like fish and that I was a lesbian. And apparently at that time in our lives, being a lesbian was uncool. But literally after the summer and the next year and all of us going into high school, being a lesbian was cool, hot, sexy, fun. So all the girls that had made those rumors the next year turned out doing some lesbianist stuff, and I'm like, wow, what hypocrites. One summer I'm a lesbian and everyone hates me. And then the next, it's cool that I'm a lesbian and you're the most popular girl in school. And where that comes from, I don't know. But I do agree with your statement where sometimes when it's trending and it's popular, especially now, on TV, there's way more of that. I got older, got into theater. And when I became a theater girl, all my friends were gay, all my guy friends, all my lesbian friends. And I was like, wow, am I gay? Because I think sometimes it is, people like to mimic each other and like to, like you really do become your environment. And I experimented with that, and I had my experiences. I wouldn't claim to be gay, but and I enjoy being straight, but I'm not saying that I've never been gay either. I think that it's just, and sometimes your upbringings and like where you're exposed, like you could feel really guilty or really bad. Or is it human to like maybe be curious about your sexuality? And times now it's more, it's more accepted than ever. So, who's to say?
I remember the cruel 8th, 9th grade rumor that went around my junior high about some girl who would never, that she used a raw hot dog as a sexual aid, which is, no, that's just so freaking, yeah, no. But yeah, it's that kind of bullshit. So Lance and I have a debate about, I think it's okay for, especially given the history of guys, for guys to kind of be pussified, to be less manly men. And like Lance has deplored the idea that you have to ask for consent in every possible situation, that it takes away the mystery of love. And I kind of think it's okay for.
Hang on for a second.
All right, but let me finish my thing, and then you can
accuse me of being a rapist on the show here.
Okay, but I think it's okay for.
I need to clarify that.
All right, clarify.
All right. What I'm saying is this: for a while, about 10 years ago, there were people that said you had to bring a form with you that the woman had to sign. They had these in colleges where the man would have to bring a form with him, and the woman would have to sign consent in order for there to be any kind of sexual behavior between them. And this was clearly designed to freeze people's behavior. Because if they have to stop and think and sign forms and be asked at every stage whether they want to go further, then the obvious answer is always going to be no. That's my point. I'm saying that all of this intrusion into people's sexual behavior that they have in private is an effort to keep the sexes divided from one another. As far as consent, yes, I do not think I think it's wrong and illegal to force yourself on a woman. All right, go ahead, Rick.
All right, so I don't think that today's guys, I think for a while, guys on average were maybe trying to be less manly than guys of the past, but I think with the resurgence of bro culture, we're back to freaking bros. What do you think? Is it okay for, like, in war, like Pete Hegseth is trying to make the military more manly? And I'm like, most of the military, like a lot of the military is toggling drones around and is not in the trenches. Do you think it's okay for men to be, less manly and bro-ish than at times in the past?
It's the most important thing in the world for men to be manly and bro-ish. That we, by the way, I never mentioned this. Pete Hegseth got an Army Service Medal and 2 Bronze Stars for combat. So he talked the talk and he walks the walk. And it's very important for men to be masculine and macho and strong. Because if you don't have that, then you don't have a country. That's how you destroy a country. Strong men make good times make weak men make bad times.
All right, let me
So-
see the camera for a second here. So my legs, I've got skinny legs at this point, and I'm able to cross my legs lady style. We're both, our legs are both crossed here, instead of that. And as long as I'm careful of my old man balls, so I don't accidentally smash them, I can do this because my legs. So I don't think this makes me any less of a man. And so Channing, do you think it's okay for men to be like, I don't know, less manly, more fey, like this shit, or, just like.
I think that chemically we are all made differently. So I think, like me as a female, obviously I'm pumping estrogen, all the way, but I have probably higher levels of testosterone. I was a tomboy growing up. I grew up with brothers. I'd like to say that I have a lot of testosterone-like qualities, even though I'm definitely a woman. But to come in and gauge people on their manliness or their testosterone or estrogen, some people are just made the way they are, the way your parents made you, and the way, if you want to say God or creator, how you're made. Of course, I love a sexy masculine man. That's what I'm attracted to. But who's to say, what defines a man or woman, besides just testosterone and estrogen? What I will say is a fact is in our foods, the hormones in our dairy, our food, our meat, and especially in our water, and the amounts of plastic and the amount of soy now in people's diets, men are becoming less and less like testosterone produced in their bodies. And so that's why you see a rise of men with breasts. And I think there's something to really be said about our diets, our foods, maybe the food culture in America. All of that has something to do with it. Right now, every person I know that's having a kid is having females and daughters. And there's a high level of evidence where it's the plastic, which is estrogen produced. It's the food we have and hormones, and it's the soy. There's certain foods that if a man's trying to keep his testosterone levels up, he should probably stay away from.
I know soy. What else?
The plastic. This plastic is in everything now, and they're now finding evidence and doing studies that plastic is estrogen producing and rich. Yes. So it's in our water, it's in our food, it's on our food. When we buy the packaging, when you drink an orange juice out of a plastic container, your water's all out of plastic. So that's what probably people should really be fearing if you're worried about your testosterone.
All right. So,
Mark is there?
Mark?
I think I know that form, Lance, that you had and everything like that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yep.
Yep. I said, I think I know that form that Lance had and everything along those lines, because I think I had that same form when I was doing a 4-H camp, because I had to pass the form from the girl to a friend of mine, but it literally asked all the different acts that you wanted to do, whether you were going to kiss on the first date. There was I think 100 questions that he had to answer, and that was way back in the 70s or the 80s and everything like that. So definitely, I think I know that form. Everything. Channing, question for you and everything like that and all along those lines. But y'all were talking about TV earlier and everything along those lines, and I've been watching a lot of what some people would call bad 70s TV, like Miami Vice and LA and Vegas and a number of other shows. A lot of those shows at Charlie's Angels, well, I haven't been watching Charlie's Angels, but I've definitely been watching Vegas and Miami Vice and LA Law and Order and some of those other shows. But a lot of those shows had what used to be called TNA, which employed a lot of actresses and all along those lines and everything. And that's part of what Naked at Night is here and everything along those lines and everything like that. But I was just wondering, do you find it easy to get those kind of jobs? Because if you look at an episode of Vegas, as I was doing earlier today, there's like at least 1,000 women that are in the various forms of non-flatness and everything like that. So they had a lot of work back in the 70s and everything like that. But I'm not seeing as many of those kind of shows now.
Are you asking if, like, you've had to take parts where, you know, it's less about your dramatic ability and more about your attractiveness, I guess? Is that?
Yes, exactly. Because there was a lot of those, and even like not even the main roles, but like on Vegas, the actresses, there was more about what they were wearing or not wearing, but then there was also like a lot of the extras that were walking by in those scenes.
Yeah, Dan Tana would have to visit a casino swimming pool, which gave him an excuse for people in bikinis to walk by.
Well, who doesn't love sexy, who doesn't like sex appeal, especially in Hollywood and TV and film? I would have to say I got a lot of jobs because, I was cute. And, having a cute personality is also a big bonus. But even when I was coming here to dress up for this, this gig, I'm like, what is too much clothes? What is too less clothes? I was told to wear a bikini for all of these. And I had this half thought like, being broadcasted on TV or on this podcast, like, what does that make me look like? Obviously, even when I do my band and I dress up for Gypsy Cabaret, sex sells. Hotness is like always more popular than more clothes and less TNA. But I think as a female, you want to be sexy, but you also want to come off as educated, smart, intelligent. I don't want to just be known for being hot and nice T and A. I want to also be known for, being fun and like smart and, being well educated. And that's really important, I think, for women. And especially if you think about all of these powerful women in TV and film and music, they had to have a certain sex appeal to even get any attention or, acclaimed, credit. But the ones that really, really stand out are the ones that make history with, intelligence and maybe things that they say that are, profound. And so there's a fine balance with that. Women, want to be respected now more than ever.
Do you think that intelligence is more a part of the hot girl vibe now than it was in the past?
I think that if we look back in Hollywood and, like Marilyn Monroe, and you think about some of these powerful women in Hollywood, the reason why they were famous is because of their sex appeal. But they were hurt by that. They wanted to be known more for their intelligence and the things they said or their thoughts. And it was kind of this, thing that if you were beautiful and sexy and, blonde and, gorgeous and curvy, that you might not have much brains. And they wanted women to kind of play that airy, fairy, sex bomb shell instead of them being, themselves and, they're showing their intelligence.
I think Marilyn.
One other quick question, because that's all we've got. Everything like that as well. And this is actually for Scott, but Lance will enjoy this last question that I've got as well. a friend of mine who is a poet, coach, and everything. She picked up a book, and the book was actually 107, which, as you know, is Kamala Harris's book and everything like that. She said that book is actually a very good read, but it reads as an indictment of the Democratic Party because she calls out Jill Biden and she calls out other parts of the Democratic apparatus in her campaign, and that they kind of like blocked her campaign and didn't help the campaign at all. And it also reads, that's what my friend Wendy says, as a plan for her to run again in 2028 and everything like that. So I know that this is good news for Lance, because Lance is probably thinking that that's somebody that whoever Trump puts out can beat and everything along those lines. But I just wondered y'all's thoughts, or if anybody else has picked up the book, because she did say that it reads as a very good book and everything. She thinks it's actually better than Michelle's book.
I don't know. I haven't picked it up. I think, I think the Dems effed up that whole campaign with, I didn't think it at the time. In fact, I gambled a lot of money. I built up a nice nest egg with an online bookie, and I lost it all betting on Harris, first Biden and then Harris to win the election. And I was wrong, and they, I think the country is suffering for it.
Scott, any thoughts on that? Because have you picked up the book yet? And any vibes on it? You're on mute.
I'm running clear over 105 hours a week right now, and have been for a long time. And so my attention's been focused on some other things. This is my first time hearing about this particular text. Anything telling about a campaign by party people where the party lost will by definition be an indictment because they lost. Right. So I can naturally assume that's part of the text. The contents of it, I would assume, would be some of the stuff that's already publicly known, plus some personal opining from that person.
Yeah, from Kamala Harris. It was from Kamala herself and everything. And yeah, it definitely was some opining.
Well, I sure as hell hope she runs. So yes, Mark, I'm for it, man. Let's Kamala Harris back and hear more of her wise and thoughtful comments.
Well, it definitely, Lance, it definitely sounded like, according to my friend Wendy, that it sounded like a campaign platform agenda. So those that have read the book said that it reads as if it's like her platform statement. So it sounds like she is laying out a campaign for 2028.
Well, thank you, Mark. You gave me a present. I appreciate it. Bye.
No problem.
We got a good song for you. And it's about partying.
En el fandango, fandango, gritando, volando, fandango, fandango de amor. En el fandango, fandango, gritando, volando, fandango, fandango de amor. En el bailar, en el cantar, a disfrutar, en a beber, en a bailar, en a cantar, a disfrutar, a beber, y
Fandango, fandango, fandango. Fiesta, fiesta, no fiesta. Hey, hey,
Fandango, fandango de amor. En el fandango, fandango, gritando, volando, fandango, fandango de amor. En el fandango, fandango, gritando, volando, fandango, fandango de amor. En el fandango, fandango, gritando, volando, fandango, fandango de amor. En el fandango, fandango, gritando, volando, fandango, fandango de amor. En el festejar. Vem a bailar, a festejar. Vem a bailar, vem a cantar. What do you say, Shaka?
Fandango, fandango, fiesta. Oh, I wanna go to the party and have a great time. I wanna have myself a ball on the dance floor, on the dance floor.
Ven a cantar, ven a bailar, ven a cantar, a festejar.
Hey, hey. Ha, ha. Ooh.
Yes! That was a JD Macho original, along with Shannon, who was singing along with me, Adam Lib, and we were just having so much fun making musica, baby. All right, that was 4 episodes back to back to back to back. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Channing. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Scott at Canadian Corner. And we thank you all for joining us. I'm JD, and we're signing out, baby.
Bam.
Bam!